38 through 44. If we have a volunteer, Chad, thank you.
Then 2 robbers were crucified with them, one on the right and one on the left. And those who passed by derided them, wagging their heads and saying, "You would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Save yourself. You are the Son of God. Come down from the cross." So also the chief priests, and the scribes and elders, mocked him, saying, "He saved others. He cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now, if he desires him, for he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" And the robbers who were crucified with him also reviled him in the same way.
Okay. I am right. I looked in the middle column there. That is Luke, where we have the thief on the cross. So we now have he's being mocked by the robbers and by those passing by. Notice which robbers mock him? Both of them. Isn't that interesting? If you just read Luke, you get the impression that the guy next to him had just been quiet all this time. But really the guy next to him comes to his senses at some point. Probably why?
When he sees what's happening.
He's got nothing to do but watch Jesus all this time and listen to what he says.
Right.
There wasn't much other entertainment, was there? Nowhere to go. Nailed to a cross. And so they're all mocking him. Why do they mention you who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself? This was an accusation that he had said this that was brought where? Which trial?
Religious trial.
Good job. Jesus did talk about the temple would be destroyed and he would build it again in 3 days. What's the temple that would be destroyed and rebuilt in 3 days?
His body.
Himself.
Resurrection.
The Word became flesh and we think dwelt among us, but the Greek is he tented among us. He tabernacled among us. The tabernacle being the temple before there was the temple. It was the mobile temple, so to speak. So Jesus is that temple that will be destroyed but will be rebuilt in 3 days. Notice they also do admit he saved others. They don't deny that. But they say, well, if he did save others, what should he do? Now, why can't he save himself? Precisely because he's doing what? Saving us. He is forsaken so that we will never be forsaken by God. It is precisely to save us that he will not let himself be saved. Notice also, he trusts in God, so they acknowledge what?
There's a God.
That there's a God and that Jesus is a believer. He's a religious man. He has faith. And then they also do acknowledge that he said, "I am the Son of God." Did Jesus claim to be the Son of God? Of course. Whenever he said the Son of Man, he in essence is saying that he is the Son of God. But then notice the robbers also reviled him in the same way. I always think that's interesting because otherwise we just think the thief on the cross was really just not that bad of a guy and he just, was kind of quiet the rest of the time. That's important for us to remember because notice in the short time that the thief on the cross flips on that. That should be a comfort for us too. Earlier he's mocking Jesus with everybody else. And a little while later, Jesus says to him, "I tell you the truth,
You will be with
today you will be with me in paradise." How much time did he have to change his life and do a lot of good things to even out his slate?
6 hours at the most.
Yeah, not a whole lot of time. It's through his faith, then, that he is saved. Christ puts salvation into the hand of his faith. Any questions so far? The death of Jesus, I will quickly read and then we'll pick up after that. Now from the 6th hour, what was the 6th hour? Noon. What was the 1st hour? For the Jews, the day began at dawn, so
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. So the 6th hour is noon. I remember growing up, for a certain amount of time, I wasn't supposed to go outside or watch TV or do anything fun. It's not a bad custom to have, right? It was from 12 o'clock till when? 3. Some Lutheran churches will have Tre Ore, right? Am I saying that right? Tre Ore services. 3-hour services which go from 12 to 3. So from the 6th hour to the 9th hour is when he is on the cross. And about The 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli. He looked up, yeah. He was calling for you, Eli. Eli, Eli, or Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? God says to God, why have you forsaken? If that doesn't blow your mind, I don't know what it takes to blow your mind. This is the low point and the high point of human history. This is where Jesus suffers hell. What is hell? It is a physical place, not necessarily in the center of the earth, but hell at its utmost is separation from God. It's hopelessness. That'll be the worst part of hell, is to, because even right now the unbeliever, the most hardened unbeliever, is not separated from God. There's still hope. So Jesus here suffers hell. He doesn't suffer in hell. He'll go to hell to proclaim his victory. But he suffers hell. He is forsaken by God. And some of the bystanders hearing it said, this man is calling Elijah. And one of them at once ran and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed and gave it to him to drink. But the other said, wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him. Why Elijah, would they think? It sounds like Elijah, but what also... What did Elijah not do that everybody else has been doing since Adam?
He didn't die.
He didn't die. He went up to heaven on a chariot of fire. When I stand here, am I way out of the... Huh? At what point does it get creepy? He had gone up to heaven in a chariot of fire. And so they thought that John the Baptist was Elijah at times. So maybe Elijah's going to come down in his chariot of fire and save him, they're thinking. Maybe that's what Jesus thinks. They give him some wine. Jesus is done now, so he takes it, and he cries out again with a loud voice, and he yielded up his spirit. In our little pastor agenda book, at Committing the Dying to the Lord, one of the lessons, listen, that you can use is the prayer from the Psalm, Psalm 36, I believe. I could be wrong. You can look it up later. Into your hands I commit my spirit. That's David's prayer that now Jesus prays, and each of us now can also pray the same. In essence, we do, if we pray the old children's prayer, now I lay me down to sleep. Pray the Lord my soul, which is the same as the word for spirit, to keep. All right, if I should die before I wake, I remember we had a poster in one of my classrooms or something growing up, that's one less test I'll have to take, right? But we can now commit our spirit to the Lord as well. And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Symbolism of that?
Well, this curtain hid people from the presence of God at the tabernacle. Now, the presence of God is open.
Yep, it was the divider between the most holy place of all, the Holy of Holies. The presence of God, it was a symbol of the sin that divides us, so that the average Joe just couldn't go in. Right? Sometimes people think that way up here. I'll see people dutifully waiting for me at the steps, kind of looking up at the sacristy, waiting for me to come out, as if they think they're not allowed to go where? You know, that's the little pastor room, and they better not go in there or else they'll be smote or something, right? I'll say, come on back here, and they'll kind of look kind of hesitant. You know, well, what's back there? All the girl's not afraid of it. But this actually was only once a year with the high priest going there. So Jesus' death removes that curtain. Sin is removed. So you can now go directly to God. You don't need a great high priest. The next thing that happens, the earth shook and the rocks were split and the tombs were also open. And what happened? Verse 52b.
Bodies of many holy people were raised to life.
So this is a foreshadowing of what's going to come through Christ in 3 days of the resurrection. Now Christ's resurrection will be a better resurrection because it will be for all eternity. But so now already some are raised from the dead. Notice it's tombs. It's not people who weren't buried yet. But they're being raised from the ground. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. So now the ground opens on the resurrection. They come out. I always am amazed not more is recorded about that.
Yeah, that's...
What was the big news this week? It turns out Jesus had a what?
A wife.
One of the guys who worked with me on one of the books I've translated he teaches at Aquinas College in Grand Rapids, a good guy. And he's a Missouri Synod Lutheran. And he got interviewed, I saw he had it linked on Facebook, for the local news channel about that. And it was great. He's just deadpan. The guy asked him, well, what challenge does this pose for Christianity? He said, absolutely none.
Yeah.
It's about a 4th century document. But it was normal to have Gnostic texts. A Gnostic was someone who thought they had special knowledge about God. All the people who go out and buy Da Vinci codes or whatever else, right? They want to know something special about God. We now know something about God that no one ever knew before. And so you would have these things circulated that would come up with things from Jesus' life. I've mentioned before, sometimes it would talk about what happened between the time when Jesus was little and when he was 12, right? Because the Gospels don't say anything. And so, it would be, here's a great story about Jesus when he was a kid. Now, the other thing is that we should be remembered, Jesus does have a bride, which is who?
The church.
Man, we're good. His bride is the church. What we have is a little fragment Jesus said to his wife. Now, if they had found something that confirms the Bible, would there be as much concern? Probably wouldn't even be reported, right?
Right.
Countless things have been found which confirm biblical events. But now we've got something that it looks like it says Jesus had a wife. I saw someone else post something that they were just surprised someone at Harvard had heard of Jesus. Harvard was founded to be what kind of school? Theological school. And so they have on one of their buildings, what is man that thou art mindful of him? From Hebrews. Right? Which is a confession of faith in Christ. But I know when Tricia and I were out in Boston, I thought how probably ironic that statement is now, because most people who read that probably think, what's the big deal about God? When actually that verse in Hebrews is talking about Christ as God. Right? But I'm not picking on Harvard. Harvard's not bad. But the Gnostics could have a lot of fun with stuff like this. And I'm surprised there's not more text that we've found talking about these people who were raised. Doesn't that seem like a theme you could just write a nice book on? Now you can go write the next Da Vinci Code novel, right?
That's where all the zombie movies came from.
Yeah. What is it now? The Waking... Oh, what's the show everybody keeps posting? Walking Dead? Waking Dead?
Yeah.
We had... Anna just will not get the resurrection. She keeps insisting that Jesus is dead, And we explain, well, he died. She says, well, he's in heaven, yes, but he's dead in heaven. Well, we finally got her the other day to at least concede he's kind of like a zombie. So we're trying to slowly get her to the point where she understands, no, he's fully alive. Like, he's not, but she can't get this. He was dead and he's alive. She's okay with him being alive in heaven, but not like alive. So now, she pictures. So we got to keep working on that. I saw a question over here.
Yeah.
Jim.
Where Jesus says, I will destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Was there any, where it talks about the curtain of the temple and the rock splitting, was there any kind of interpretation that is what he had meant by destroying?
No, the gospel writers all take it as he means his body.
Okay. Jesus
does tell us the temple will eventually be destroyed. Basically, in 70 years, we know it will be destroyed. Why?
Because
the Jews revolt, the Romans come in, and they total the city. And so that's why he says stone will not be left upon stone. So that now, since that time, the Jews haven't had a temple. We Christians would say, well, there's no point for one. But that's part of the reason they fight over the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. The big mosque there. The issue over that isn't just that the Jews don't want them to necessarily have a mosque. It's that they believe that's where what used to be.
That's where the temple is.
Yeah.
And so if they want to rebuild the temple, what needs to go away? Ariel Sharon actually had bulldozers there at one point. And if you wanted to see a powder keg, that would have been some fighting, right? But that's part of the issue. They believe Muhammad, was transported to Jerusalem, and so that's sacred to them. But if the Jews ever did want to rebuild their temple, that's where they think it is too. So that's why that's such a flashpoint. And there's some Christians who think the temple should be rebuilt, but we would say, why? Usually it's always Christians who think there's going to be a rapture, and we've got to have some Jews convert to Jesus, so that then there will be a big war, Armageddon, right? We would say that's kind of misunderstanding. But that's why they fight over that little piece of land. But I just want to get through the centurion's confession, if we can get to verse 54. When the centurion and those who were with him, keeping watch over Jesus, saw the earthquake and what took place, they were filled with awe and said,
Truly it was the Son of God.
So